Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Welcome, everyone. Welcome, our visitors. We're very honored and happy to introduce you to some of the visitors that London Mining Network have been working with from Serbia, Madagascar, and Arizona. They will be telling you the stories of the communities fighting against mining and how they have been affected by the companies. But before that, as you know, this event has been organized by London Mining Network. My name is Anka Giurgiu, and I'm one of the trustees and co-chairs of London Mining Network, and I will be facilitating today's event together with Doti. If Doti would like to introduce you.
Yeah, I'm Dorothy Guerrero, from Global Justice Now, but I'm also in the Board of Trustees of London Mining Network.
So, as probably most of you know, London Mining Network works in solidarities with communities affected by mining in different parts of the world. Communities that have been affected by companies listed on the London Stock Exchange or based in the UK. And one of the things that London Mining Network is trying to amplify the voices of the community. So is working in solidarity and in support. And today you will be hearing some of the fights and some of the stories of these communities. Also, I'd just like to tell you that as London Mining Network does a series of work from research. There is also an education program. Also, we will be talking, Dottie will tell you more about the work around the AGMs and how we are supporting communities, especially fighting against the mining corporations, and a few other things that we will be telling you around the evenings. But if you want to Google London Mining's website, you will see all the materials, the reports. There is a big work also on just transition. There are a few reports that have been published, so yeah, we would like to welcome you to read those. I will hand over now to Dottie, but just before that, just to tell you a bit about the layout of the evening. We will be hearing, as we mentioned, different stories from our visitors and presentation, but also we will be watching some films. There will be a Q&A session, so you will be, we will get the chance to ask questions after each presentation, and we will try to allocate around 10 minutes for the Q&A. I will hand over now to Dottie to tell you more about the AGM. And
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Anka. And as London Mining Network's practice as well, we are holding events. We attend AGMs of the companies, conglomerates that we are also focused on. For this year, the AGM of the Anglo-Australian mining giant Rio Tinto is not a usual AGM. They are celebrating their 150th anniversary of work. So that means for 150 years, they've been operating and also affecting people's livelihood, and the environment. And the Rio Tinto is also the second biggest in terms of metals and mining. It's the second biggest corporation that is engaged in metals and mining, only behind BHP, which is also one of the corporations that London Mining Network is attending its AGM to as well. In the past, whenever Rio Tinto holds its AGM, London Mining Network attends as dissident shareholders to pose uncomfortable questions and to also to remind the company that, hey, there are still communities and people that are suffering and being impacted by your operations worldwide. And we also know that during AGMs, they will have those glossy materials where they will report to their shareholders how much they gained, how much they profited, and how enriched, or how all those shareholders will become richer because of that operation. And so we take the opportunity to ask those difficult questions, and at the same time to also inform the public what the Rio Tinto is doing, because for many, especially maybe not all of you who are here, many people think that investments is important because it opens the country to investment, and investment equals progress. But the problem is, there are many, many untold stories of suffering behind those operations, and conglomerates or transnational corporations, they are welcomed with open arms. They actually operate like the new empires. And in the case of Rio Tinto, if you're operating in many countries, I think what I read is that since 1873, they are operating in 36 countries with 170 mining operations. So if you are a corporation like that, you're like a new empire. You can go anywhere, anytime, and do anything that you wanted to do in that territory with very little that governments can do, or the communities that are impacted can do, to halt your operation or even question you. Because in many instances, there's a hand in glove that play here, where you have the investors and also you have the police, military, that stop organized or communities from organizing and resisting mining operations. I'm from the Philippines. I know for a fact that happens. And in many instances as well, the communities were even told to leave the place. So it's not just impact on livelihood, it also impacts on people's history. Because if they abandon the area, they will lose that history. They will lose things that they know, the relationship they built in that community, the whole history of their family and everything like that. So from the first mine in Spain in 1873, so Rio Tinto expanded to many countries: Zambia, Australia, West Papua, Arizona in the US, Mongolia, Colombia, Madagascar, and many places. That's why I mentioned 36 countries, right? And for these 150 years, they've been engaged with really environmentally destructive operation. And also, this operation also impact indigenous people first and foremost, because if we come to think of it, many of these mining operations are located in places where you have the indigenous people that are steward of the land, that has protected the environment, and then they were also they were impacted, and their whole life world will change. And at the same time, even if they close the operation, the communities will still be left behind by the toxic waste that they leave behind. And that is true in the case of many places, like in Papua New Guinea, West Papua, also Madagascar as well. And in the modern day period as well, Rio Tinto also benefits from investor-state dispute settlement, like in the case of Madagascar. And this is a new instrument that companies like Rio Tinto use, that wherein it allows investors like Rio Tinto to sue host governments when they think that there are some actions that will impact on their profits. So that's also the case in Mongolia, for example, when they had that case when they raised the question of the tax that they're supposed to pay. So there are those instances as well. And also in this age wherein we are in the last critical decade to solve the problem or to address the problem of climate emergency, Rio Tinto is also claiming that they are part of the solution. So it is, in fact, behaving like it's like a wolf behaving like a sheep, or claiming that it is actually our grandmother, when in fact it's devouring everything that is within its area of operation. So in this time when they are claiming that they are also the solution, and in fact their operation, they will report it in their AGM, that their operation is aligned with the Paris Agreement. So they have all these 2030, 2050 targets to net zero. The problem is net zero will not get us away from the 1.5 degrees centigrade global warming to keep people safe and alive, even in many countries. So they are simply adding to another type of destructive mining alongside fossil fuels, because they also found, Rio Tinto also found a new fanciful green minerals. They are mining big time cobalt, lithium, and copper as well, which is necessary for those so-called green energy. So this year, this year and this evening is also special because you will hear reports and also lived stories, experiences of at least three countries where Rio Tinto is operating. So we have cases from Madagascar, from Serbia, and also from the US. So I hope you enjoy the evening, and I hope that despite the grim stories that you will hear, you will find hope, because this will also be stories of resistance, stories of coming together to build that resistance and working together and networking and building solidarity to fight a big giant like Rio Tinto. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Dottie. So hopefully you've heard the story and how Rio Tinto operates, but we would like to introduce you now to Kit and Yvonne, who will be telling you about the Rio Tinto's operation in Madagascar. And thank you and welcome. Thank you for being with us today.
All right. Can you hear me well? Okay, so hi everyone. My name is Kay. I'm from Madagascar. I'm the Executive Director of Transparency International in Madagascar, but also the National Coordinator for Publish What You Pay, which is a coalition of organizations striving for better governance of, the extractive industry. And this is my first time in London, so very happy to be here and really thankful to the London Mining Network for having me, and also especially to Yvonne, with whom we've been partnering for a few years now, researching on the QMM mine. So QMM is a subsidiary of Rio Tinto in Madagascar. It's Quit Minerals Mining. But before getting into that, I would like you to introduce yourself, Yvonne.
Oh,
Please.
so my name is Yvonne Orengo. I'm the director of the Andrew Lees Trust, an NGO based in Britain that's been serving the people of southern Madagascar for 27 years. I'm not really meant to be sitting here. We were expecting another Malagasy colleague, Tahir Ratsiambotra, to be here this evening, and unfortunately he went down with COVID. So I feel very privileged to step in this space and offer what I can to the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Kay.
Yeah, so first information before starting, I'm not part of the affected community, but we've been researching on that community, and what I'm going to share tonight is, this evening is most of the findings that we had, but nonetheless, I will show you a short video, testimonials from the communities, telling with their own words how they are feeling, and what they are asking for. But that will be in a few minutes. But first of all, the context of the mine. So the exploitation started in 2005. It's located in southern Madagascar, southeastern Madagascar, and it produces ilmenite, which is a major source of titanium dioxide, which is used for painting mainly, and other stuff, of course. So QMM includes the deep water port of Ewala, where the raw material is exported, shipped to the Rio Tinto Fer and Titan plant in Canada. So that's the main destination of the ilmenite, the raw material. So it is known that more of 15,000 people are living around the area called Mandena, so where the mine is located. And for some years, this population have been claiming, for compensation for the loss that they have experienced because of the mining. So we heard a lot of stories about that, and that's why, so within Publish What You Pay and Transparency International in Madagascar is chairing Publish What You Pay coalition. That's how we got involved into this. And that's why when we heard those stories, we started to think that it would be great to document the problems to try to go down the south and hear and listen to the communities, ask them what are their perceptions and their feelings, because most of the time people don't care of population communities. It's a mining company. I understand it is about profit, but I think profit making can be done in a responsible way, maybe. But then we wanted to give a chance to people first, listening to their version. So that's why we had this first study in 2020 on the perceptions of people about the water pollution, because people out there are saying that the waterways that they are using, the lakes and the drinking water, whatever, are polluted by the mining operations. And that during more than 10 years, the color, the smell, the taste of the water has changed. And then communities are convinced that it is linked to the mining operations and of wastewater that has been, released in lakes and wherever. But of course, the company denies all of this. The waters are totally pure, nothing happens there. Pollution occurs from bad behavior from the population. They used to, wash their clothes in these lakes, so it's polluting everything. They are dirty. We've heard that during the AGM, I was intervening online. I can't remember if it was last year or 2 years ago, but I was shocked by this answer from Rio Tinto, like, yeah, it's not our fault, it's about the local communities themselves who are polluting these waterways. I was like, okay, I'm not a scientific person, but nonetheless, I do think that you can't have a kind of mining exploitation or operation without leaving something in the nature, something harmful at some point. So, yeah, but we need evidence, of course, and that's why Yvonne is here. I'm talking about the perceptions first. So last year we wanted to dig further into that community's perception. I don't know if you can operate the presentation at some point. On communities' perceptions. And okay, it's okay then. I will do without it.
Okay.
It's fine. Yeah. But I hope you have the video.
Yeah.
All right. It's cool. We can do it. And then last year we did another study, and then we discovered this time we wanted to investigate the neglected impacts of a large-scale mining operation, because in Madagascar we only have 2 big mining sites. So this one of QMM and Rio Tinto, and we have another Canadian company, Ambatuvi. So that's 2 big mines. And then we have medium-sized and small-scale mining, artisanal mining. So the question was, what are the hidden impacts? By hidden impacts, we mean those impacts on the lives of communities that no one talk about, no one care about, but the communities live on a daily basis. So we discovered, when we asked a question to a larger sample of population, that 94% of them were not satisfied with the mining. They said it has brought more problems than solutions in their lives, because people, have some expectations. Extreme poverty is striking in Madagascar. It is one of the most poorest countries in the world. So the expectations were very high when having this big mining company in town and in the surroundings. But through our survey, we have demonstrated that there are 3 main most negative impacts of the QMM mine, according to the people we surveyed. The first one would be the loss of access to natural resources, such as land, forestry, fish as well, And the Association of the Fisher Folks out there told us that since the mining came, more than 27 species of fish has disappeared from the lakes. 27. And there are only 4 left now, 4 kinds of fish. Of course, total denial from the company. They don't have anything to do with that. The second most negative impact would be the loss of water quality, coming with food insecurity and health problems. And the third loss would be the loss of income and social conflicts and unrest. But what also comes as a cross-cutting issue is the loss of cultural rituals, because people use products in the forest for their burial, funeral rituals. If they can't access those plants, they are losing part of their cultural identity. So this is also something striking. And you cannot replace that. You cannot compensate that with money or with whatever. It is spiritual, it's cultural. So you have to preserve that. And there is also lots of other problems, like the majority of rural communities are not benefiting from the mine. It's more, the benefits are more seen, in urban areas, like access to electricity, for instance. In Madagascar, only 15% of the population, total population, has access to electricity. In the whole country, I mean. So, of course, it is the fault of the government. But the company then provides electricity, and it's good, but it's mainly in the rural areas. And there are multiple intangible losses. The decline of societal cohesion, because the company is giving money to some people and not to others, creating social divisions among the community. People fight against each other. Also loss of identity, as I said, loss of dignity, generational issues such as land access for long-term family food security and health of children, and so on and so forth. So there are multiple concerns. What we want to point out is that last year there were lots of demonstrations from the community. And when these demonstrations occurred, people were claiming for compensation for those more than 15 years of loss. And agreements and negotiations were, discussed between members of communities, members of local authorities, and representatives of the company. Like, okay, let's get together and try to craft something, to try to calm down things and to compensate people. All right, that was maybe a good intention. And that occurred after the fish deaths that Yvonne will talk about the water story. But the fact is that after almost a year, because these negotiations started in May of last year, people are not happy in Mandena because their voice have not been heard properly. The compensation process, the grievance mechanism itself, was not transparent enough, not accountable enough, because we have copies of the minutes of meetings gathering those representatives, so-called representatives of the communities, authorities, and the companies saying this agreement doesn't have to be disclosed. If someone discloses it, then it will be void. How can you pretend solving issues with this culture of secrecy? You cannot do anything like this in the shadows, because such a grievance mechanism has to be publicly known, has to be transparent, so that people, so that CISOs, so that NGOs can monitor it and help it to be fair. But that's a fact that we have. It has been done in a secret way. And lots of people were not able to submit their files correctly because lots of people are illiterate. So if you ask them, to file something for claiming a compensation, they won't be able to do that. And even if the company offered legal assistance, the communities didn't trust people who are working for the communities. We have recommended that working from the company, paid by the company, we have recommended that the third neutral party will get into the negotiations to help the communities, but as usual, the company doesn't listen to our recommendations. But I'm talking too much. What we need right now, before passing, the mic to Yvonne on the water problem, is that we need an independent audit of this grievance mechanism. We need it to be backed by independent people, and we need transparent and accountable way of doing it. We don't want to kick the company out of the country because this region needs development. We do think that the mining can still, bring something positive if and only if they listen to the community and if they comply with the rules, with the safeguards, and respect communities' fundamental rights. There is a better way for the company to behave, and the government as well has to do so and monitor everything in a very transparent way. No more collusion between the company and the government. That would be also something striking. So thanks a lot for listening to me, and Yvonne, it's your turn.
Thanks, Kay. So my history with this mine goes back about 27 years, so I'm not going to take you that far back tonight. We don't have long enough. But the most recent series of engagements we've had with the company have been to do with the water quality, which started with an inquiry as to why the mining company had breached the limits of the mine and had extended itself into a local lake and put its mine tailings on the bed of that local lake, with the concern that in doing so, these tailings would expose the waterways where people are, as Kay has explained, fishing and drawing their domestic and drinking water, that it could be exposing them to contaminants such as radionuclides, uranium, thorium, that are all within the mineral sands. And this began an inquiry which has been going on 7 years. It took 2 years for the company to admit that it had breached the buffer zone, and it was a lot of work to get them to admit that, but it's quite hard to ignore NASA satellite data. It's much harder when you get dug down into the data concerns and issues around water quality and radioactivity. So the Andrew Lees Trust, and working with some really amazing experts, have been able to produce a series of studies, starting with a radioactivity study, which, because there was no measurement of ingestion pathways that had been conducted by QMM on the ground, that's to say, they had not been measuring the radioactivity impacts of the mine on the local populations in the general environment, mostly only focusing on workers. Our expert was able to, using water, chemical measurements of water, detect a signature of high uranium in waters downstream of the mine. This is using QMM's water data. Okay, it's their data that tells us this. And we raised a flag about it, and we published our report, although they didn't want us, the company didn't want us to publish that particular finding. And we did publish it, and it precipitated further inquiries that have been going on for 6 years. Now, part of the difficulty is that this is a complex set of issues around water quality, not least because for 4 years we weren't able to access any baseline data. So this is a supposed green mine. It's one of the first so-called green mines on the planet, and advertised as such. And we couldn't get from the mining company any baseline water data. And this is a mine that is dredging its mineral using large quantities of water in a very, very watery environment. So the mine actually sits next to, and friends here who've worked in Madagascar know this area very well. The mine sits next to an estuary, which is a series of lakes and rivers. It's literally right next to this estuary. And then just after the estuary is the Indian Ocean. So this is a very, very watery environment. It's also a tropical sub-Saharan African climate with regular cyclones. So it's a very watery environment. So actually water management and the management of the water from the mine itself is important. And why is that? So when the mine, I'm sorry I don't have slides because I wasn't expecting to speak today, but when the mine extracts from the mineral sands the ilmenite that it wants, it also extracts zircon and monazite, which are high in uranium, by the way. When it does the extraction process, it has to churn the mineral sands, and this churning process concentrates things like uranium in the mining basin water. So the company make a very strong point of saying we don't add any chemicals, there's no contamination here. It's not a question of adding chemicals, it's the process itself which concentrates this. And our radioactivity expert, who has 40 years of experience in the mining industry, a highly reputable and highly respected expert who worked on this, went back to the data and said, yes, we can see in the mining basin concentrations of uranium 1.27, 1.67, higher than that too. I mean, the WHO limit is 0.03. So we're talking 50 times higher than WHO limits. The other concern is lead, which is a decay product of uranium. And we did further studies, partly because there was no upstream data, which was weird, because why wouldn't you have any upstream data? So we were able to get residents involved in helping to collect data. We were able to then show that not only was the uranium elevated levels, but also lead, 40 times higher than WHO limits. And of course, if you're talking about impacts on communities, and particularly intergenerational questions, and this is in an area where people are already malnourished because of extreme poverty, something like lead can have huge issues for children's development, their brain development, their bone, all kinds of health impacts. So then you're talking about not only children being malnourished, but potentially exposed to a toxin that can seriously impede their development. So there's a huge intergenerational question involved with that. We finally got hold of baseline pre-mining data 4 years after having been told there wasn't any. And we're able to look at this and think about what the company tells us, which is that the uranium is all naturally occurring. That is their argument. The argument is these elevated levels of uranium are all naturally occurring. But the baseline pre-mining data tells us that is not the case. The pre-mining levels of uranium come in at 0.0002, 0.0002, and so on. So we have a big dissonance there. We have not been able to get around to discussing that yet because last year there were 2 tailings dam failures. I have to correct that because the company have told us they don't have any tailings and they don't have a tailings dam. So they must be the only mine in the world that doesn't have any mine tailings. And if they don't have a dam, then that means they're not containing their mine tailings because they have a big basin full of water which is full of toxic materials called mine tailings. So we have a lot of blockages in trying to resolve these technical issues. So this speaks to also the transparency issue and the fact that if you factor into this that most of the villagers being affected are non-literate, you can imagine the challenges that we have about trying to engage in a really serious conversation. And for them, the villagers themselves to be able to engage in a serious conversation about what is going on wrong around this mine. I'm going to stop talking there because I could go on awfully long time about all of this. I'm happy to answer questions, so thank you very much.
Yeah, so thanks a lot, Yvonne, and we will finish with, just a bit of our video. We won't play the whole thing, but just having 2 people testifying in the video, and then we can stop it maybe for 3-4 minutes max. Thanks a lot.
Mosa avy anao avy eo amin'ny fokontany mandondomosa districtny Tolagnaro.
Ramasosotra Christian, président pêcheur avy eo Andrakaraka, commune Fort-Dauphin.
Ratianrina Odily, avy eo Pasinampoana filohan'ny Zufritier, misy olo-tegna ny commune Telotota.
Ny taninay eo Mandromondromo zany commune Mandromondromo sy Pasinampoa dia nivelomanay io laha tamin'ny razanay ka hatram'izao. Rehefa avy Kememo tsy noatroany ny taninay igny. Da very fiveloma zahay eto. Voafitaky ny zahay satria ny taninay zay namolianay, ny velomanay tao dia simba tanteraky. Marary zahay resy zahay da sy misy velomanay sasy hatram'izao. Very fiveloma tanteraky zahay. Io zany tsy nisy tambin'io ka mizaka am'zareo Kememo zahay hoe mba omeo compensation zay mitaky an'io aminjareo na indemnisation dia sy afaka izy aome an'io. Tamin'ny fotoa tamin'ny 2011 nampandehaniny zay nisangana amin'ny taninay tsirairay Constant Delier da occupant traditionnel laha tam'izay zahay da nahazo vola ny sasany voarefy sy nahazo vola da mbo misy eta ny tanin'ny sasany sy voarefy hatram'izao dia very fotsiny ao Pasinampoana io ao Mandromondromo sy io. Zay am'izao miamahantra mizaly sy zereny ny fivelomanay ka io mampitarainanay amindrareo fazakana foibe sy zay fazakana mahefagna. Zereo akaiky zahay tompoko fa mizaly zahay zao. Je ny fasandrazanay nafindra ny sy ara-dalàna sy ampanina da io ny agnisan'ny mampitarainanay io. Zany fasazany mahatanosy anay zavatra sarosa aminay sarobidy aminay zay. Ka io zany natao sinosininy io sy avy amin'ny fombandrazanay nanaovany an'io. Ka eto zahay dia mangataka onsa amin'io zahay satria mitaraina aminjareo fa mizaly zahay zereo akaiky. Zay zany mizakako aminareo.
Ny fandehan'ny rano Fort-Dauphin zany indrindrandrindra mifaritry ny Ambavarano Andrakaraka eo. Tamin'ny taloha zany izy io ranomamy nifanohy tamin'ny ranomasy. De nofa nisy zany ny fananganan'ny Kememo ny C de Versoara amin'ny faritry ny Andrakaraka eo. De nataony moa ny fananganana ny C de Versoara. De tamin'ny fotoanandro zay tafasangana ny C de Versoara partir en 2008 de tapaky zany ny fia zenegnanay tamin'ny ranomamy zay nivelomanay ao Andrakaraka eo. De karaza fia agny amin'ny 150 ny totalin'ny fia very tamin'ny toera nisy anay amin'ny faritry ny Andrakaraka eo. De pilis tafaran'izay zany tamin'ny fagnarian'ny Kememo ny rano maloto boakagny amin'ny faritry itrandrany satria amin'ny sisin'ny ranon'ny Ambavarano ny itrandrany Kememo de nagnary rano maloto izy. De zay fia nivelomanay tagnatin'ny rano laky nivelomanay io zany maty koa noho ny rano maloto boaka amin'ny Kememo agny. Zay zany ny fahitavanay anazy, ny fomba firesafanay anazy ary zay zany hainay resafana amin'ny faritry misy anay. De nitaray zahay tamin'ny Kememo de sy hitanay zany ny fagnampia avy amin'ny Kememo agny ny raha ataony himo zao zany ny fagnampignampia ataony Kememo aminay. Ka mitaky an'igny fiverezan'ny fia very io zahay onitra amin'ny Kememo de mitaky an'igny fagnomezan'ny Kememo rano maloto zay sotroinay hatramitsika miresaky zao mbo agnisan'ny misotro an'io rano maloto zahay amin'ny faritry ny Andrakaraka eo. Ka mitaky onitra zahay amin'ny Kememo mba hiveloman'ny taranakinay, hiveloman'ny faramandimby ho afara ao.
Maro dia maro tokoa reo zavatra mitranga ao aminay. Ao ny fahasimbany sy fahapotehan'ireo fivelomanay tao agnatin'ny gn'ala. Vokarin'ny gn'asa orinasa Kememo. Tamin'ny voalohany nentim-paharazana ty fivelomanay itiky. Ao zahay no mangalaky ny mahampy. Zay tena hafantarana miavaka fa tanosy zahay. Ary io mahampy io mihitsy no zavatra ivelomanay no sady iafarany ny fiaignanay koa rehefa amin'ny fahafatesana. Zavatra tena misy lanjany aminay zany izy io satria iafarany fofonainay zay amognosana ny razana rehefa maty. Nosimbaniky mem amin'ny alalan'ny dragy izay itrandrahany podika sady tsy misy sasy amin'izao fotoan'izao. Mitarainy zahay momba an'io satria maro ny tranga asesiky ty fahasimbany ty ala ty satria maro ny fivelomana ao agnatiny. Ao ny fangalany lehilahy hazo, ao ny mahampy, ao ny misy ny biby isan-karazany zay nivelona tamin'ny toeran'io ary tena tsy misy sasy amin'izao fotoan'izao. Simba ny fiaignanay satria very tanteraky zany ny fivelomana sy ny vola zay niaignanay. Io ny mahatonga anay mitaky amin'izao fotoan'izao satria tsy misy sasy ny zavatra hiaignanay, ny hivelomanay. Amizao zahay de fa tsy afaka mampianatsy, tsy afaka misabo-tegna raha marary noho ny tsy fahitavanay vola sasy amin'ny fivelomana simba eo. Ka eto zany zahay mitaky amin'ny orinasa ny onitra na gn'andamize compensation ho an'igny fiaignanay satria sahira mafy zahay amin'izao fotoan'izao tsy misy sasy ny zavatra hiaignanay ary tsy misy fanantenana sasy zahay amin'izao fotoan'izao. Mitaraina amin'io zahay ary io fivelomana io no mahatonga ny sasany aminay amin'izao voatery tafiditsy amin'ny fonja noho ny ty fivelomana ity. Nihina hazo zahay, nihina mahampy zahay, ka io tsy misy sasy voatery mandeha amin'ny lalana tokony tsy hombanay sasy zahay amin'izao fotoan'izao satria sarobidy ny fiaigna. De voatery ze trasa agnatin'io ala tahiry io de mandeha amin'ny fonja avokoa amin'izao fotoan'izao. De mampalahelo anay zany fa zay rehetra tratra tao de voan'ny sahazy mandritra ny 5 taona avokoa. Malahelo mafy zany zahay mikasika an'io satria izahay tsy hitanay sasy ny hataonay. Mihanto zao ny harato amin'ny rano de mihantona koa ny famakinay hangalana ny hazo koa satria marikarikaby zahay handeha ho amin'ny ala agny noho ny havanay gadra agnatin'ny 5 taona io. De voatery samy mipetraka amin'ny tanàna zahay tsy misy mamelo tegna sasy. Ka mafy ny manzoanay mitaraina amin'ireo fanjakana mangataka fitodihana zahay fa mahatonga anay manao ny fitokonana de noho vokatry ny sy fitenoananay tsy misy ny mihaino ny fitaregnanay ary tsy misy ny mangoraka amin'ny fahavoazanay. Voatery zahay milasaka andalambe manakana ny camion zay itondrahana ny fasy mainty satria io vokatra io de avy amin'ity taninay mandena ity. De tsy misy lanjany zany gn'anay ao ambony fa gn'any orinasa no tena misy vidiny ary tena mahatra zahay amin'izao fotoan'izao. Fahantrana sy nateraky ny Zagnahary fa fahantrana vokatry ny nataon'ny orinasa. Zay ny mampalahelo anay ka dia mitaraina amin'ireo fanjakana zahay. Mba vonjeo re zahay fa agnisan'ny mizaly sahirana mafy zahay ponina mampiasa an'io ala io, mampiasa ny rano indrindra moa ny tany lahateo zay fa simba amizao. De mba miasa vonjy zahay, saotra tompo.
We will just have the question and answer at the end because we wanted to make sure that we hear all the cases, and then we'll have the question and answer at the end. So to start the next one, we'll have a short 5-minute film on the Jadar Valley in Serbia. So now we're hearing Jadar, and we have 2 speakers here as well. We have Nebojka Petkovic and Zoe Lujic.
Ja ću pričat na srpskom, ima ljudi koji me razumeju, a Zoe će da prevodi na engleski.
So he'll speak in Serbian because we do have a few Serbs here, but I'll translate.
Evo,
Yes, sorry.
Zovem se Nebojša Petković, vidjeli ste odakle dolazim. To je jedno od ugroženih sela u dolini Jadra gdje Rio Tinto hoće da otvori rudnik litijuma, a kompanija sutra proslavlja 150 godina postojanja i poslovanja, a naše porodice u tom kraju žive 7, 8 ili 9 generacija. To je značajno duže od njihovog postojanja. Član sam udruženja Ne damo Jadar, koje me ovlastilo da budem ovde i govorim u ime svih članova mog udruženja, ljudi iz Srbije koji se slažu sa našim stavovima, kao i ljudi širom sveta koji se bore protiv zagađenja na bilo koji način. Ne damo Jadar je organizacija meštana koji se uglavnom bave poljoprivredom i uglavnom su to ugledni ljudi u svojim sredinama.
It's a longer speech, so I had to translate in advance because my brain's a bit tired these days. Right, his name is Nebojša Petković. He is one of the villagers from the place that you just seen in this little video, in this beautiful, beautiful green valley. He was born and he lives in the same place called Gornja Nedeljica or Upper Nedeljica. There's a lower one as well, and it's right on the border of the proposed mine. Here we are, Rio Tinto celebrating 150 years of experience. However, the families that live in the valley can write their history 800 years back. So that's far longer than Rio Tinto's existence. He is a member of Ne damo Jadar Association, that's a citizens association, which basically loosely translated means we are not going to let you have Jadar and destroy it, obviously. And his association has authorized him to be here and to address all of you on their behalf, and pretty much on behalf of all Serbia and citizens of Serbia, and citizens around the world who are opposing this kind of ecocide and extractivism. That's a local organization of inhabitants of those endangered villages in the very fertile Jadar Valley, where farmers and householders are respected and they respect their surrounding as well.
Naša organizacija je nastala kao organizacija koja će da pruži otpor Rio Tintu i rudniku, u principu rudniku u našem kraju, međutim kasnije se ta priča proširila na celu Srbiju i sa još 5 organizacija koje imaju sličan problem iz krajeva u kojima se isto istražuje litijum i bor. Osnovali smo jednu veću organizaciju koja je danas prepoznatljiva kao neko ko sarađuje sa skoro svim ekološkim organizacijama u Srbiji.
Okay, well, I don't need written translation for that. Basically, their association is a local Jadar Valley association, but they very quickly recognize that they have common, this is a bit of a loose translation, they have common goals with quite a few other organizations, especially in that part of Serbia. So they formed something called SEOS, which is a coalition of various organizations. So there are 5 organizations within that coalition. And their motto is, we know that we will not give it. We will not give up, we will not give in, we will just not give our land. And they cooperate pretty much with just about any organization, whether in the country or internationally.
Kao što ste vidjeli na snimku, one demonstracije širom Srbije smo mi generisali zajedno sa još nekoliko nevladinih organizacija.
So those huge protests that you had a chance to see earlier, and those protests, I have to say, are the ones that stopped the mine. And it's the first time in, I think, Rio Tinto's history that something like that has happened. So they're still bewildered what the hell happened there, but they were part of the organization of those protests.
Tokom ove 2,5 godine borbe povezali smo se i sa organizacijama iz Španije, Portugalije, Čilea i Nemačke koje imaju slične probleme sa potencijalnim rudnicima litijuma. A evo za ova 2 dana sam upoznao čoveka iz Arizone i Ke iz Madagaskara koji su mi prenijeli svoja iskustva i njihove, da kažem, potresne priče.
So in their short but very illustrious existence, they have also connected with activists from Portugal, Spain, Germany, and
Chile.
And Chile, yeah, of course. And now he's had the pleasure and honor to meet Kay and Yvonne from Madagascar, and obviously our Arizona friend, there you are, to learn from their experiences and their struggles.
Generalno vlada mišljenje da rudarstvo ne može da opstane bez korupcije. Rio Tinto je čak i priznao korupciju, pa je pre izvjesnog vremena platio kaznu od $15 miliona, pa uopšte ne isključujemo mogućnost da su uspjeli da korumpiraju našu vlast. Čak ih je i sadašnji predsjednik optužio da su korumpirali njegove prethodnike koji su bili na vlasti kad su oni došli 2004. godine. Doduše nije izneo dokaze, ali niko nas nije upozorio na istoriju Rio Tinta koju, kad su došli u Srbiju, niko nam nije rekao da su sarađivali sa nacistima, da su izazivali građanske ratove, da su zagadili vode gdje god su poslovali, da su srušili ove pećine u Australiji i tako dalje. Nemaju svetao primjer poslovanja, koliko ja znam.
Okay, well, there is an opinion, and rightly so, that there is no really mining without corruption, which most of you know that, and even Rio Tinto themselves have been fined for corruption, $50 million recently, as I recall. They have also been, and this is a bit ironic given our government, but our government accused Rio Tinto of corruption, or rather cooperating with our previous corrupt government, which basically let Rio Tinto in, but then they would, wouldn't they? So they're blaming previous government, even though they're very much in the pockets of Rio Tinto.
Od 2004. do 2019. godine, dok su trajala istraživanja u dolini Jadra, Rio Tinto nas nije obavještavao o njihovom toku, znači nismo znali ništa šta se dešava, sve do nekih nagoveštaja 2017. godine kad su počeli da ubeđuju ljude da im prodaju imanja.
He also said that basically nobody informed them, because Rio Tinto came first to Serbia in 2004, and nobody informed people at the time about the history of Rio Tinto and about the fact that they worked with Nazis very much, and that they caused wars in Papua New Guinea, that there were, people died, the destruction in Madagascar and similar. So nobody in Serbia up until 2017, when things started to really, hot up and the operations to spread, they didn't really pay much attention or know much about it. So they kept exploring all that time, those 13 years, sort of undercover. And only in 2017 did people realize what was happening and started to rise up.
Početak istraživanja im je bio težak, jer narod je pružao otpor, nisu htjeli da daju svoje parcele za istražne radove, međutim oni su prijetili policijom i to je sve tako trajalo do 2006. dok se nije ispostavilo da je nalazište u dolini Jadra bogato i onda od tad pa nadalje sve su rešavali novcem.
Okay, so at the beginning they struggled because people wouldn't let them on their land to do any exploration. And then in 2006, as I understand, they realized that lithium, the quantity of lithium in the Jadro Valley was so high, so huge, that they decided it was worth them a while to basically persevere. So then they started to solve problems with money, and they're just buying up anything. Well, they're buying up goodwill, they're buying up political will, as you all well know.
Kompanija je sve vrijeme radila po oprobanom receptu širom sveta. Znači, narodu se pričalo da je to samo istraživanje, da je za projekat potrebno 6, pa 20, pa 50 hektara. Rukovodioci kompanije su se sprijateljili sa lokalnim uglednim ljudima, zapošljavali su ljude iz sela i to je oproban recept. To smo kasnije čuli da se dešavalo u Rumuniji i širom sveta.
So they started off, same as everywhere else. They started to get friends with people, they started to employ people, give them good salaries, and given that it's a rather not very rich area, they're rich in nature and the resources, but not really financially and economically, they started to buy people, to employ people. And the mine was supposed to be only 6 hectares, and then it expanded to 15, to 20, and I think now we stand at 950 hectares from the original 6.
Sponzorisali su lokalne manifestacije, davali su donacije školama i drugim institucijama, ali sve to posle 2006. kad se utvrdilo da je nalazište veliko.
So yeah, they're giving lots of money for sport events, for sport clubs, for cultural things, educational, whatever, but they only started that in 2006 once they figured out the amount of lithium that is there. So basically they are giving trinkets in order to get the real wealth, as they consider it.
Krajem 2019. se pojavio prostorni plan iz kog smo vidjeli da je za projekat neophodno 950 hektara plodne zemlje i šume.
So in 2019, the government brought this national spatial plan where people realized that it's actually going to be all of 950 hectares, and there is, just for you who don't work in hectares, 2.5 acres per hectare. So it's really, really huge. And that mostly covers either old forest growth or very, very fertile agricultural land.
To je bio okidač da zajednica reaguje, a u tome su nas podržali i podržala nas je naučna javnost, naši eminentni stručnjaci u svim oblastima na čelu sa akademicima.
And that was a huge trigger for citizens to start reacting to the mine, because obviously the loss would have been incalculable. And the citizens and the activists and people who rose up were supported by our scientific community, namely the Academy of Science and Arts.
Biološki fakultet je stavio do znanja da će realizacijom projekta trajno devastirati područje od preko 2000 hektara na kome je utvrđeno da postoji nekoliko stotina biljnih i životinjskih vrsta, od kojih je 145 strogo zaštićeno.
Yeah, so the Faculty of Biology has made it clear that the implementation of the project will permanently devastate an area of over 2,000 hectares, and that's times 2.5 to get it in acres, where it's been determined that there are several hundred plant and animal species, of which 145 are either protected or highly and strictly protected, out of which about 68 by the Berne Convention alone, which Serbia has signed in 2008 and is legally obliged to respect. Nonetheless, they are still bulldozing over.
Projektom je predviđeno seča oko 400 hektara šuma, znači u zoni rudnika i u zoni deponije.
So the plan to start off with to cut down 400 hectares of old growth forests in the zone of the mine, but obviously it will have much wider impact.
A znamo da su šume najvažnije u amortizaciji negativnih efekata emisije CO2.
And we all know that we need forests in order to mitigate climate change and CO2 emissions.
Sad, kad pogledate prostorni plan, to su sve ogromne cifre. Pa recimo za dnevna potrošnja sumporne kiseline je 1000 tona. 600 tona je ostalih hemikalija.
Yeah, so when you take a look at the spatial plan and the needs of the mine, I mean, the numbers, and I had to read them like so many times thinking there's got to be a zero too much, but there isn't. So they're going to use, how much did you say? I still find it incredulous, and I still have to read it. They're going to use about 1,000 tons of sulfuric acid a day. It is a horrendous amount. There's going to be 600 tons of other chemicals, which are more or less aggressive. There's going to be 4 to 8 tons of dynamite, 250 tons of cement, about 750 cubic meters of various aggregates, which are necessary for the processing process on daily basis. And that would mean that it is expected to have about 30 wagons of chemicals and about 500 trucks or truck journeys throughout the region on a daily basis. It still sounds incredible.
Dalje, od 4 do 8 tona dinamita, 250 tona cementa, 750 kubika agregata, što bi značilo da bi svakodnevno Srbijom prugama prolazilo 30 vagona hemikalija, a zajedno sa odvoženjem gotovih proizvoda i jalovine putem bi prolazilo oko 500 teških kamiona, što je ogromna emisija CO2 koji nema šta da neutrališe jer bi šume bile isečene.
And that, of course, would spew horrendous amounts of CO2, and other pollutants into the air, which is contrary to climate change mitigation, which Rio Tinto and others claim lithium will help solve. And having cut down the forests, which was supposed to soak up some of that, makes the matters even worse.
Jadarit je kompleksan i jedinstven mineral, znači takav nigdje ne postoji na svetu taj sastav, koji u sebi osim litijuma i bora, bor je sam po sebi štetan, sadrži još štetnih materija kao što su arsen, olovo, kadmijum i drugi.
So the very ore, jadarit, is very unique in its composition, and besides lithium, it also contains bore. I think it's called bore also in English, I don't know, which in itself is also very toxic, but it also contains arsenic, cadmium, and lead. So all of that would basically go into nature and further into the entire system.
Znači, jadarit je karbonatna ruda i u reakciji sa sumpornom kiselinom dolazi do ogromne, nenormalne emisije ugljen dioksida, zašto nam treba 2000 puta više šuma nego što ih trenutno imamo da bi uspjele da amortizuju tu količinu ugljen dioksida. Naš kraj sam, sigurno.
Okay, so basically, jadarit is of such a composition, it's a carbonate ore that in reaction with sulfuric acid would release horrendous amounts of CO2. And it is calculated that the local region, in order to compensate for this amount of CO2 that's spewed into the air, would need at least 2,000 times more forest than it has just to be. And we all know it doesn't really work like that. It doesn't automatically, but in theory and mathematically, and obviously we don't have that amount of forest.
I to zagađenje bi se širilo cijelim regionom I cijelom Evropom.
So obviously the pollution doesn't stay in one place, so that would travel through the region and further into Europe and elsewhere.
Dalje, voda je ključan faktor u proizvodnom procesu za ispiranje rude, pa se pitamo odakle će dovući, osim ako ne planiraju da koriste veliki rezervoar pijaće vode od aluviona Drine koji je dovoljan da podmiri 85 miliona stanovnika na tom terenu.
The other factor is obviously water, as many of you will know, and this is a very water-intensive process. So the citizens are asking where the hell they're going to get that much water that they need, unless they plan on using drinking water from the local estuary and the river valleys, which is needed for drinking water for people and for agriculture. But it's apparently very rich area in water, which is.
85 miliona.
Well, apparently it can satisfy needs of 85 million people with drinking water. That's how rich it is. But then it will get horrendously polluted, obviously.
Sad ne znamo da li planiraju tu vodu da koriste za proizvodni proces, a I ako je ne budu koristili, ispuštanjem otpadnih voda u Jadar zagadit će taj rezervoar.
So because they're hiding the details of their operation, we are not sure if they're going to use that particular source of water. But if they do, it will get polluted, and then because it then goes into further bigger rivers and then into Danube, it will just flow further and make a whole ecocidal mess of the whole region, and then further into Danube and Black Sea and God knows where.
Na isti način su ugrožena I vodoizvorišta širom Srbije na tom putu. Znači ugrožena su vodoizvorišta sa kojih se vodom snabdeva 2,5 miliona stanovnika.
And because of that, in the same way, sources of drinking water are also endangered, and that those are sources of drinking water for at least 2.5 million people locally.
Rio Tinto je već u istražnim radovima napravio velika zagađenja u dolini Jadra I obeštetio je te vlasnike parcela na kojima je izazvao zagađenja. Mi smo ih podnijeli krivične prijave protiv njih, međutim naše pravosuđe nije reagovalo I ja se iskreno nadam da će doći trenutak kad će imati jedan pravi proces kao što je danas bio onaj performans I da će neko da ih zaustavi u uništavanju ove planete.
So even in this so-called exploratory stage, the boreholes have caused quite a lot of pollution, and it will further pollute waterways. But the citizens have already raised criminal charges against Rio Tinto, which our legal system is not reacting to. It's somewhere in the bottom drawer, I guess, waiting for it to time out, which it does eventually. But on the other hand, the government is chasing the activists, and they have a few legal proceedings against them which were brought instantly and dealt with instantly. So what is he hoping is to one day see a real trial, like our mock trial, which was fantastic, but to see real trial of Rio Tinto and to see real judgments as we had today.
Hvala.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Zoe and Neboja. Hopefully you find very interesting the testimonies of all the ones that have spoken so far. We've decided to put the Q&A at the end. So we're just going to invite Roger, that he's going to talk on Rio Tinto's Resolution Copper project in Arizona, US. And Roger, just to remind you, we have around 10 minutes or 15 minutes for your presentation, and we'll do, how much do you need?
I'll do my best.
No.
I thought they said 20, but yeah. Okay, I'm Roger Featherstone. I'm director of the Arizona Mine Reform Coalition from Tucson, Arizona. I wanted to start out with a short video. We had an event at Oak Flat, the area we're trying to protect, a few days ago, and I shot some video of folks wanting to address folks in London here about why they should help us protect Oak Flat. I'll have to say that I screwed up when I got up to Oak Flat. I realized I had forgotten my good microphone. So for some of this, the audio is not going to be great, but I ask you to bear with it because, especially the first two, some young people really wanted to get their words across. So let's do the video, and then I'll finish up with a slideshow and talk a little bit more about the project.
I'm a freshman in college right now. I'll be attending the University of Arizona next year. I'm Oneida from Wisconsin and then Coeur d'Alene from Idaho. And Oak Flat is just a place that, one, is just beautiful. Like, scenery is just something to like be in awe of. And then, like I said, I've said this multiple times before, but there's something here. I was never a super spiritual religious person, especially in high school, but being here has shown me that there's something here. There's something, I don't know what, but some sort of, just best use of words, higher power here that needs to be protected and can't be destroyed. And it's something that I'm really passionate about, and I'm willing to put everything I am on the line for, and in order to save and preserve Oak Flat.
Hello everyone, my name is Kiana Beasley. I am the daughter to Krista and Christopher Beasley. I'm part of the White Mountain Apache tribe, and I am Bear Clan. I am a junior at Xavier College Preparatory, and here I am today at Oak Flat to help and send the messages to you in England. I actually had the honor of having a sunrise dance, which is a cultural ceremony of girls coming of age. It's where girls are transitioning from girlhood to womanhood and setting off their life. When I was 12 years old, I actually got to go through the 4-day ceremony, and it consisted of dancing and strength and endurance, and it's just to resemble that you can always overcome any obstacle in life that you are faced with. And here at Oak Flat, the San Carlos Apache people perform their ceremonies here, and the girls have their ceremonies and their sunrise dances here. And the reason I'm fighting for Oak Flat is because I want other girls to have ceremonies here at Oak Flat to connect to the spiritual in their ancestors that were buried here. And actually, my ceremony where I had my sunrise dance is actually in an apartment complex now. So I don't want that to happen to other girls and have a huge crater where their ceremonies were, where they used to create all those wonderful memories and hear the people laugh and hear people that they haven't seen in so long, and all those memories just be gone because of a huge crater, and just their sunrise dance, when they look back on it, is just filled with sorrow. We want it to be filled with happiness and joy, so that is the reason to protect Oak Flat, and this is a reason why you should help and protect Oak Flat.
Hey, I'm Russ McSpadden. I'm the Southwest Conservation Advocate for the Center for Biological Diversity. I'm here in Oak Flat. This is where Rio Tinto subsidiary Resolution Copper wants to destroy this entire valley here for their copper mine, and we're not going to let it happen, and I hope you all will join in this fight. They're going to completely destroy an Apache sacred site and totally drain the water from this region and disrupt and destroy the biological diversity of this entire place.
I'm Kurt Shannon, Policy Analyst for the Access Fund, and the Access Fund is a national nonprofit organization trying to protect rock climbing areas from being destroyed. primarily by projects exactly like the Resolution Copper project. I think a lot of people don't know that Oak Flat is a premier climbing area, and in fact the site of the world's largest climbing competition for 15 years running. That's yet another reason. The loss of climbing, the loss of recreation is yet another reason, on top of the environmental destruction and the destruction of a sacred site, it's yet another reason why the area should be preserved in perpetuity. And I think anybody who cares about any of those things, recreation, pollution, and religious rights, be there in London or someplace else, should want to pitch in.
My name is Sylvia Delgado Barrett. I am the Vice Chair of Concerned Citizens and Retired Miners Coalition, which is based out of Superior, Arizona. I worked underground for Magma Copper Company from 1978 until 1982 when the mine shut down. That mine is now Resolution Copper. The style of mining that they intend to do is very destructive, nothing like the old style of mining. We need your help in continuing with this fight.
My name is Tom Macias. I'm a resident of Superior. I've worked in the mines here for practically all my life. I've worked in different capacities. I worked in the smelter, underground, the mill. So I know the system pretty good. My concern is that this new outfit, this new mining company wants to destroy a beautiful area that Superior has always been, associated with. Our families come up here, we picnic, we spend Easter here. It's just such a big part of Superior. Well, that's why I'm really concerned about it getting destroyed. But not only that, but this mine's going to use so much water that's going to affect our community as far as the water table, the source of our water. There's just so many issues against this type of mining that we really need to stop this project. Otherwise, it's going to be detrimental not only to the local communities but the East Valley.
My name is Ilenia Aguilar. I'm with Hecho Hispanics for the Environment and Conservation and Camping, and I am really glad to be here at Oak Flat advocating for the Apache community, also for water. Water is life, agua es vida, and it is not unique to just this community but to the entire state. I also serve on the Central Arizona Water Conservation District Board, and what we know that will happen if Resolution Copper gets its way is that it will use 250 billion gallons of water. That's enough water for 140,000 homes for the next 40 years. And that is going to really impact not only our community, but our state and the livelihood of the people of the Apache who live here in this area. And we know that we're all connected in this planet, and the impacts that Arizona will see will be not only just national but global. If resolution is able to prevail, we will see the impacts in the aftermath in our water contamination through the aquifers, and that will lead to other environmental disasters. So we need to protect the water, and need to protect the land and culture and history. And, we're all interconnected. This will impact everyone. So hopefully we can all stand together and do what's right for our Oak Flat community.
As you see there, we live in a community of plants and animals, and as a community, we are equal. However, of course, Rio Tinto has the view that they are on top. We're really incensed that Rio Tinto would come to our communities in special places and have both our governments and Rio Tinto tell us we need to take one for the team and let them destroy what we hold dear. For climate change, but really for their corporate profits and vanity. So let me dash to this slideshow. If I can figure this thing out. We're a coalition of many different groups from all different walks of life. we're unified to protect Oak Flat. Oak Flat, the company, rather than going through the usual mine permitting process, went straight to our U.S. Congress for special interest legislation. That legislation was passed in the dead of the night, attached to National Defense Authorization Act. It was added to the bill at midnight and voted on before noon the next day. That would be the first time that the United States government would give a Native American sacred site to a foreign mining company. It'd be the largest loss of public lands recreational climbing opportunities, and of course it only benefits Oak Flat. The worst thing about this is not only would it destroy Oak Flat, this Native American sacred site that's a recreational and ecological haven, it won't work. The mine would be 7,000 feet deep. There's not enough water for the mine. The company doesn't even have the technology in hand to make it work. So why in God's name would we want to destroy a place like Oak Flat for a failed experiment? So Oak Flat is an hour east of Phoenix, our largest city. It's a half hour west of the San Carlos Reservation. And the mine project is massive. These figures, basically from east to west, this project would stretch 75 kilometers. It would damage 6,500 hectares. It would create a crater. Basically what they want to do is an upside down open pit. The mine deposit, or the ore deposit, they say, is a cubic mile in diameter, a mile underground. And what they would want to do is to put their infrastructure underneath the ore body, blow it up, and let that ore body collapse down into their infrastructure. In the meantime, the surface would collapse, and it would create a crater 3.2 kilometers wide and 350 meters deep. Someone told me the other day, I haven't necessarily ground truthed that would be the 10th largest crater in the world. And then, you know, they wouldn't produce the finished copper. That one of the reasons for this bill to go through was we needed this copper for our national defense. Arizona now exports 29% of the copper produced in Arizona because we don't have enough refining capacity. And so what this company would want to do would be to concentrate copper, put it on railroad cars, send it down to Mexico where it would go on ships to go overseas to China for processing. So this doesn't necessarily mean so much for you guys from London, but for us in the U.S., if this mine were going in the operation and we wanted to buy a 10-foot piece of copper pipe that came from Oak Flat, it would be stamped made in China. But at any rate, the mine would produce 1.5 billion tons of toxic waste that would be piped through incredibly rugged terrain, 20-some miles to the southeast. It would be dumped on the ground on an online facility contained by a tailings dam 500 feet tall. This facility would be online. It's in the watershed of a river, the Gila River, that ends up winding through Arizona, through Mexico, and dumps out into the Sea of Cortez. And if that dam were to fail, some of those 1.5 billion tons of toxic waste would end up in the Sea of Cortez. There's a lot of problems with modern Arizona mines. Modern mines export water. I haven't mentioned yet, we're in the middle of a 23-year straight mega drought. That's the worst Arizona has faced in 1,200 years. And we are truly at a point in time where we have to make a decision in Arizona. Do we want water for our communities, our farmers, in the ecosystem, or do we want water to export overseas to this foreign company? Rio Tinto blew up the sacred rock shelters at Yukon Gorge that were 46,000 years old. And after that, they promised they would never, ever, 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 ever do it again. However, their plan for Oak Flat is to do exactly that, blow up, or not blow up, but sink Oak Flat into a 2-mile wide crater that would kill a people's religion. And so how they can justify that has to be the ultimate example of double talk. Currently, the United States government released a document outlining the damages, but because of a law that was passed, once that document was published, the government had 60 days to give the land to Rio Tinto. However, that was under the last days of the Trump administration. The Biden administration rescinded that EIS, stopping the clock from ticking for privatization. 3 lawsuits were filed. Our organization filed one, San Carlos Apache Tribe filed one, and an Apache NGO filed a third. Those are still in the works. Last summer, another government agency blasted the final impact statement. And then in September of last year, 2020, Rio Tinto announced that they were going to do a feasibility study to decide whether they would even continue with this project. They're now saying they can't do that feasibility study until they own the land, and we're calling bullpucky on that, and we're telling them that they need to complete that study before and decide whether they actually can move ahead before the government issues their final environmental impact statement and even thinks about privatizing the land. I will end with some more pretty pictures. I spent a lot of time out at Oak Flat. We have a wildlife camera project. That first clip of critters from Oak Flat, those are all from our cameras. So for the last 12 years, I've covered every inch of Oak Flat. I have bled, I have sweated on that land. Its earth is under my fingers and is part of me. And this guy is one of my favorites. Every camera check I go and visit him. And that beautiful blooms like that. We had a bad fire at Oak Flat in 2021 that will end up being better for the ecosystem than it was before. This guy I thought was dead. Last time I went there, it's coming back. So that's kind of my totem for Oak Flat, one of them. One of the sunrise ceremonies that took place at Oak Flat. Oak Flat is popular, as Tom Macias said, for the people of Superior. If you want to go camping at Oak Flat Easter weekend, like many, many, many people do, you would have had to reserve your camping spot basically last weekend because it's packed this weekend. Critters, more Quadamundis. I should say here, Quadamundis, has anybody seen a Quadamundi before? It's a member of the raccoon family. It reminds me of a cross between an anteater and a monkey. They travel in troops. Oak Flat they're prevalent in South and Central America, but Oak Flat is one of the most northern places they reach in the U.S. And as climate change gets worse, these guys, their distant relatives, are going to need a place to go because Central and South America could end up being too hot. And as long as we keep Oak Flat the way it is, they can come up and visit. Javelinas, one of my favorite sunburned black bears. This fight has made strange bedfellows. Ordinarily, conservationists don't get along too well with people that go four-wheel drive and off-road. But in this case, Oak Flat is great for everybody. And these guys, we all work together to protect this. Climbers at Oak Flat, again, Oak Flat there's only 10%, Arizona is desert, and we only have 10% left of our desert riparian habitat. So you can find year-round water at Oak Flat, and that's really something we need to keep. Petroglyphs at Oak Flat showing that it's been used for many, 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 many hundreds of years. and just the spectacular scenery you won't find anywhere else. Rio Tinto is doing their best to divide and conquer. That shouldn't surprise any of us. They claim that only the San Carlos tribe is opposed to this project. Nothing could be further from the truth. All the Arizona tribes. This is a ceremony signing ceremony for a petition from the Arizona tribes that actually went to our former President George W. Bush. We've been at this fight for 19 years. One of the early demonstrations. And I guess I'll kind of end there. We intend on winning this fight no matter how long this takes. Some of our people get discouraged, but I remind them that the company planned on beginning construction 8 years ago. So time is our friend. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Walter. Can we call on all the speakers to sit here again so that we will have our question and answer?
Thank you. So just on the question on the just transition and the transition minerals, I just want to say that London Mining Network, as I mentioned at the beginning, is actually working quite actively on that, and there are 3 reports. So I invite you to go on the website and see.
Yeah, I just blasted through what I was going to say so quickly. The minority partner in the project that we're stopping is BHP. BHP owned a mine called the San Manuel mine that's about 50 miles from Oak Flat. That they abandoned in about 2000 with 30 years of copper underground. At the time, it was the largest underground copper mine in the United States. Before those companies even think about destroying Oak Flat, they should go back and finish the job at San Manuel. At least in Arizona, there's a lot of copper that can be gotten if we really need copper for the transition, or more copper other than all these other initiatives. If it's needed, there's other places that let's finish the job at places you've abandoned before you destroy something so sacred and brand new.
You were asking about the climate change movement and climate change organization recognizing sacrifice zones are really happening, and do they understand that in the overall picture? Was that kind of a? No, they don't. That's what I'm trying to say. They don't. They don't. They see it as a separate thing, which is very ridiculous. There is this very narrow view of climate change and connecting it strictly to CO2 and fossil fuels. But I'm a deep environmentalist, so for me it's nature destruction, biodiversity destruction, obviously water destruction that is far more pertinent than just spewing CO2 and stopping coal. In many cases, my motto or motto of our organization in this particular case of lithium mining is you cannot solve one ecocide, which is obviously global climate heating, by creating another ecocide here and all over the place. And that's the mindset they just don't have. They just see climate change, but climate change is just a result of many other things. One of primary things is nature destruction, obviously. So you cannot, that would basically undermine their own case for climate change, prevention and mitigation with this. And I don't know what their thinking is. I'm really not in that particular movement, but from what I see from the outside is they see it as the overarching issue, and okay, we can sacrifice a little bit here, a little bit there for the wider, but it doesn't work like that. And what gives them the right to sacrifice anybody? So in short, they don't, and we don't cooperate really with them. They're actually one of the biggest opponents of our movement, if I can say that. Not everyone, there are reasonable people, but by and large majority, which is ridiculous, but. Well, you just said it, free energy. It's free. Because the current, the mainstream narrative, not the London mining narrative, not things that Whit will talk about, climate justice, and something that all of us in this movement are deeply in. But and we personally, in my organization, we don't call it just transition. We call it transformation, because transition is usually linear, and that's exactly what's happening. They're just changing fossil fuel combustion engine for lithium batteries. And what's a battery? Just a storage. You know, it's nothing. Where does that energy come from? Never mind the whole impact of mining, which in itself, as he presented in the case of the other lithium mine, will contribute to climate change immensely. So right there, their whole case falls apart. Right there, just the mining process, never mind the whole thing of adding new cars on the road and building new roads and all of that. So it's business as usual. And you mentioned it, free. It just, it didn't work then, it won't work now. But yeah, it's a huge problem. People just want to continue to live as they do, and then they want this magical solution to make them feel not guilty, and like, oh, look at me, I'm all green, but you can't or not.
Sorry,
sorry, I can go like this. Yeah. I'm very passionate about it, and you touch the nerve.
Sorry, we have to leave the room quite soon, so we just want to make sure that we can. So we still have 15 minutes. But yeah, if you want to answer the second question.
Just a bit of word about this climate change trend. I think that the world is running to another disaster if we don't put, enough safeguards on that, because it is a big trend right now, climate change. We are stricken by climate change, and Madagascar is one of the most countries at risk for climate change. But nonetheless, when our president is running around the world, like claiming for millions of dollars for mitigating climate change, I'm a bit like, caution. If we don't have the proper safeguards in terms of anti-corruption and, governance, then this money can be diverted for, vested interests. So this is something that we have to think of carefully around the world, about the nexus between climate change, access to energy. Will the energy transition be really just for whom? For the North, or for the what about the South then? What about countries like ours, from where you will extract the transition or critical minerals? So let's think about it more thoroughly. Now, answering to your questions on Madagascar, litigation, it's not yet part of what we thought, because the decision to litigate must come from the communities first, litigating or not. But what we've been trying to do is to document the human rights violations so far, and to also, bring their message to the company and to the government, because for us, they are equally responsible of this disaster. So we still believe that they can do things in a better way. As I said, there is a way for doing so. And before the company relocates in 2 other locations, we don't want them to replicate the same disaster scenario. So we're not there yet, but yeah, we're striving. And what's a success? And we have a plan. So, we're here in London this week, and it's part of our plan to discuss of our future plans, like what we are going to do together. But the idea, that's the purpose of the London Mining Network, I guess, getting people together and building the resistance. And yeah, we're here for it. So you will hear from us.
Sorry.
Yes, I think your proposition is a very interesting one. A lot of the people here today have been working collectively under the auspices of the London Mining Network to challenge the company. And we've sent joint letters over many years enumerating the problems, the human rights issues, the tailings dams issues, which are concern on almost all of the cases. in different ways. And the response has largely been extremely unsatisfactory, to the extent that it's almost very difficult to find the motivation to put a new letter together, because we end up saying the same thing and not getting as far as we like. And it's very interesting, your proposition, because I think what one needs is teeth in order to be able to make change. And if people aren't listening to you, then you have to find ways in which they will listen. So we'll definitely be talking to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, go ahead first.
Neko je pitao da li ima snage u tim združivanjima. Pa mora da bude snage, zato što do pre 20 godina ovaj problem je bio vezan samo za afričke zemlje, recimo. I evo sad je došao u Srbiju, znači u Evropu, došao je u Ameriku. I onako kako sam ja posmatrao situaciju na Madagaskaru, da ne kaže da me nije bilo briga, ali se nisam interesovao za problem, tako sad Evropljani gledaju nas u Srbiji, a kad im problem dođe na njihova vrata, onda će tek da se probude, a možda to bude kasno.
So he's basically answered, I think it was a part of your question, if there is strength and teeth in joining forces, especially with international organizations and communities, and he says, well, obviously there has to be, because up until about 20 years ago, these problems were sort of Madagascar problems, or, you know, Papua New Guinea or elsewhere, but not really in Europe, and now they've come to Europe, they've come to the States. What he's saying is not that he didn't care about their problems, but they were the other side of the, of the world. It was really remote, but now it's not at our door, but it's literally on our homestead, so that's what other people in Europe who are removed from the Balkans must be looking at us like, oh, yeah, it's horrible, but so definitely needs to be joining of the forces, and Alaman is doing a fantastic job of, bringing us all together. That's my add to that. But yes, there has to be a lot of power in joining forces, because obviously it's all over the world and it's just going to get worse and worse.
Yeah, so just a small answer to the lady's question, like how to do it in a just way and empowering communities. So the first thing would be ask people first when you want to come somewhere, like, do you want mining here or not? And that's also the duty of the government, and that's what is called, the prior and informed consent. And it has to be a real consent, which means that people have the right to say no. And if they say no, it is a real no, and don't try to bribe them or whatever. And also, if the community accepts then the mining, the government and other stakeholders have to really closely monitor what the company is doing, and in an independent way, because once again, we have seen collusions between national authorities and some companies, so this doesn't have to occur. And also have an independent grievance mechanism, because that's a big thing. In our case in Madagascar right now, people are not happy with it. Don't create any kind of discrimination or division between the communities as well. This is totally something which is very sad. I mean, because we have the feeling that it's not the company itself maybe, but the situation has destroyed this part of our society. So people are spying one another. Have they received any compensation from the company or not? How much have they received? Why 1,000 for them? Why 100 for me? It's a total mess, and it is already adding to the already scarce situation, the extreme poverty, and it's horrible. So yeah, and that's a mixture of all of this, but the summary will be people first and people before profit. I think that if all mining companies and governments were thinking of this, that some benefits can be driven for all stakeholders by such exploitation, without extractivism, our world would be a quite better place. But maybe I'm daydreaming, that's
No,
a
you're not.
wish.
You're not. If I can just add one sentence to that, being an environmentalist, the right to say no can't be just the privilege of human beings. We're just one of 3.5 million different species. So all nature should have a right to say no. You know, all nature, all living beings, all life has an intrinsic life, a right to life. So it's reasonable to presume that operations like that will give numerous living beings and, you know, destroy ecosystems. So that right that humans have or should have, right to say no and right to decide, should be expanded and extended to all living beings living in the area, and that's the premise on which we work. So when we ask questions at the AGM and tomorrow, it will be in the name of all living beings of Serbia, not just human beings, because every living being will be impacted, an ecosystem. So just my 2 cents on that one. Now, Nebojša wants to answer the question. Somebody's asked about what a successful cooperation with a corporation might look like.
Pa da ne ostane pitanje bez odgovora. pošto niko nije odgovorio.
So it's not left without an answer.
Sa njima je teško sarađivati jer oni ne prave kompromise, znači oni ne biraju sredstva da dođu do cilja, znači ili je to sila ili pokušavaju da vas podmite, i ne zaboravite važan podatak da akcionari Rio Tinta su vlasnici 40% svetskog kapitala.
He's got an interesting detail which I didn't realize, but basically says it's extremely difficult to cooperate with corporations like Rio Tinto is, because they operate on bribery, on force, on you know, dirty deals. So it's very, very difficult to have any positive cooperation with them. But he says that the owners of Rio Tinto, I'm not sure how, you know, of that info, I don't know where he got it from, but he says that they're owners of quite a huge percentage of world wealth around the world, so which gives them a lot of power. So you don't really cooperate with a body like that. Well, not positively in any case. So that's the final word. Thanks.
Yeah. So thank you for those final words. And as we have seen in this event, we, time and time again, one of the things in London Mining Network that we see is that when we bring different countries together that are affected by a certain company, when we bring them to London to attend an AGM of a company, then they get to know each other's stories. They get to discuss and strategize together, learn from each other. And I think that's the great value of this kind of bring people together, because companies have their strength in dividing people. Companies have strength in exploiting people, and Rio Tinto have done that. The question of, is it reformable? Are they capable of reforming? We can see from what they have mentioned, from what they have presented, we can hear that from what they have presented. So I think, thank you very much for coming here, for spending this time with us. And that's what they mentioned, the strength is in the unity, the strength is in solidarity. We need to, if Rio Tinto is operating globally, we need to globalize our resistance and struggle against them. So thank you very much, and take care everyone, and thank you for the speakers.